Hello, and welcome to this presentation, which aims to help you in your immigration process to study in Quebec. These steps must be taken quickly after you've received your offer of admissions to Polytechnique Montréal, whether it is conditional or final. Here are the objectives of this presentation. First, we'll give you an overview of the documents that you will need to obtain before you can study in Quebec. We'll explain their role as well as the order in which they are obtained. Then we'll give you tips and tricks to minimize the risk of error and ensure that your applications are processed as quickly as possible. When you start your immigration process, it can seem very complex. However, with time and patience, you can do it yourself. Applications come with instructions for filling out the forms, and a lot of information is freely available on the internet, including on the Polytechnique's International Students website. Be aware that no priority or special treatment is given to an application that is submitted through an intermediary. But if you really want to retain the services of an immigration professional to support you, make sure you deal with an authorized representative that is either a member in good standing of the Barreau du Québec, a member in good standing of the Chambre des Notaires du Québec, or a recognized immigration consultant registered with the Quebec Register of Immigration Consultants. You must then indicate in your forms that a paid person is representing you, specify the identity of this person, and provide a duly signed power of attorney. For example, when applying for a study permit, you'll need to complete a form entitled Use of a Representative. Make sure that all information is correct before submitting the forms, because ultimately, you are responsible for the information that they contain, even if an intermediary has completed the application for you. By following these tips, you'll reduce the risk of falling victim to fraud by malicious individuals, as well as the risk of a misrepresentation that could lead to inadmissibility in Canada. Here is an overview of the immigration documents that are essential to your stay in Quebec and information on how to obtain them. To stay and study legally in Canada, and more specifically in Quebec, you'll need first a passport issued by the authority of your country of citizenship, a CEQ of studies issued by the Ministère de l'Immigration, de la Francisation et de l'Intégration, which we will from now on call the MIFI, and a study permit issued by Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, which will be abbreviated by IRCC. Applications for study permits submitted abroad are processed by Canadian visa offices, usually attached to Canadian embassies or high commissions. Why two different authorizations? This is because in Canada, immigration is a shared jurisdiction between the federal government, which is the central Canadian government, and the governments of the various provinces. This is why, in order to study in Montreal, you must apply to both levels of government. Quebec selects its international students, while Canada admits them to its territory and grants them a legal status. To travel to Canada, depending on your country of citizenship, you will need either a temporary resident visa, abbreviated here as TRV, or an electronic travel authorization, or ETA. Citizens of a European Union member countries require an ETA, while citizens of most other countries require a TRV. US citizens and permanent residents do not require an ETA or TRV. The TRV is a sticker in your passport and is required for travel to Canada, regardless of whether you plan to cross the border by land or by air. The ETA is a virtual authorization, which is required to fly to Canada. Both are issued by our IRCC at the same time as the study permit application is approved. You do not need to take any special steps to obtain them. Here is the order in which you will need to do your immigration procedures. On average, all of these steps can take between 2 and 5 months, depending on the country from which you will apply. It is therefore important to start your immigration process as soon as possible, whether it is with a final admission or with a conditional admission offer. Let's start with the passport. Whenever possible, it is best to have a passport that is valid for the entire duration of your studies, as the expiration date of the study permit and TRV or ETA cannot exceed that of the passport. If your passport does not cover the entire duration of your studies, you will need to renew it during your program. In this case, we recommend that you find out in advance how to renew your passport. The application for CAQ for Studies is done online. The transmission of the requested documents must also be done electronically through an online platform. You can begin the process of obtaining the CAQ for Studies as soon as you have a valid passport and an official letter of admission from Polytechnique Montréal. The validity of the CAQ is not limited by the expiry date of the passport. The CAQ can be issued for a maximum of 4 years, and if you are not able to complete your studies within that time, it's not a problem. You can renew your documents from within Canada. The deadline for obtaining the CAQ for Studies is normally a maximum of 1 month, but this deadline can sometimes be longer during peak periods between April and June. Please note that MIFI has recently made changes to the issuance of the CAQ for Studies. If you already submitted your application and that it was approved before March 15th, 2023, MIFI should have uploaded a letter to your account confirming the approval of your CAQ for Studies application. This letter is to be used to apply for a study permit. An on-paper version of the CAQ for Studies should then have been sent to the mailing address you provided in your file. As of March 15th, 2023, approved applicants will receive a CAQ for Studies issuance letter in their online account upon completion of their application, and no more documents will be sent by mail. If you are coming to Canada with dependent children of primary or secondary school age, you will also need to obtain a CAQ for them and pay the application fee. Spouses accompanying the student as workers or visitors do not need a CAQ. If MIFI sends you a letter of intent to refuse after you have submitted your application, we recommend that you contact us as soon as possible so that we can assist you. We'll give you our address at the very end of this presentation. Once your CAQ application has been approved, you will need to apply for a study permit online. Approximately 24 hours after submitting your application, you will receive instructions on how to provide your biometric data at a visa application center. In addition, depending on the country where you are residing or staying, IRCC may require you to undergo a medical examination or provide with a police certificate. Processing times vary greatly between Canadian visa offices, but on average, they range from 1 to 4 months. Please note that you have no control over these, and neither do we. We cannot contact the Canadian visa office that is processing your application to request that its processing be expedited. This demonstrates the importance of submitting your application quickly and building a good case. If all goes well, at the end of the process, you will receive a letter of introduction for the port of entry, which will indicate that your application for a study permit has been approved by visa office. You will need to bring this with you to Canada, as it is this letter that will allow your study permit to be issued upon arrival at the airport. As mentioned above, you will not need to apply separately for a temporary resident visa or an electronic travel authorization, as these are processed at the same time as the study permit. It is very important to ensure that you have received approval for all the documents required for study before leaving for Canada. We strongly discourage you from attempting to come to Canada as a visitor to wait for your study permit to be finalized, in part because of the risk of deportation upon arrival in Canada. It is recommended that you arrive between 2 weeks and 1 month prior to classes beginning so that you can settle in and begin your program in good conditions. If you carefully follow the instruction on the official MIFI and IRCC websites and on the Polytechnique International Students website, you will be well equipped to formulate your applications. What we are presenting today is a complement to this freely available information. We want to offer you some practical advice to help you avoid common mistakes that can slow down the processing of your application and cause you unnecessary stress. Let's start with the CAQ for Studies. This is the simplest step in the process, but there are still a few pitfalls to avoid. The online application for the CEQ for Studies is a two-step process. First, you'll need to fill out the application form and pay the processing fee. Approximately 48 hours later, you'll receive a file number that will allow you to submit your supporting documents through the ARIMA platform. Be sure to submit a complete application because if a document is missing, you'll have to wait for the MIFI to request it before submitting it, and this will cause additional delays. It is not possible to add a document to a pending application on your own initiative. The 1-month processing time begins once the supporting documents have been submitted via ARIMA. If you submit only the form and fail to upload the documents, your application will remain on hold indefinitely. Residents of certain countries and territories will be required to submit proof of financial capacity at the CEQ application stage in addition to the study permit application. This is the case for residents of France, Reunion Island, the United States, and Mexico. If you are concerned by this obligation, there's a few things to consider. Make sure that the financial evidence provided meets the minimum threshold established on the MIFI website. It must also be recent, that is, generated less than 3 months ago. If you are providing financial evidence from bank accounts, please note that only personal accounts are accepted. Documents for corporate account will be rejected. Property titles and other assets are not accepted as financial evidence at the CEQ level. You may have more than one person supporting you during your study period, even though the online form only allows you to designate one guarantor. If you have more than one guarantor, make sure each person completes their own declaration of financial support. You can download as many forms as you need from the MIFI website. Finally, note that the electronic signatures are not accepted by the MIFI. Only handwritten signatures in pen are accepted. If you are accompanied to Quebec by your spouse and dependent children, here's what you need to know. You will first need to indicate on your CEQ application form for studies the name of all accompanying family members. If you are required to submit proof of financial capacity at this stage, be sure to submit financial evidence that demonstrate that you meet the minimum threshold required by the MIFI based on the number of people in your family who are coming with you. Most of the time, spouses come with an open work permit or visitor status and do not need to apply for CEQ for Studies in this case. Preschool children enter Canada as visitors and do not need a CEQ for Studies either. If your child will be attending primary or secondary school upon arrival in Quebec, you will need to complete a separate CEQ for Studies application for him or her, as well as a study permit application at the next step. Since the school your child will attend will be determined based on your address, once you are established in Quebec, you will not need to provide a letter of admission to a school when applying for a CEQ for Studies. Now, for the next step, the application for a study permit. Some Canadian visa offices, or CVOs, allow the submission of a study permit application before the CEQ application has been answered. This is usually the case in offices with long processing times. If you are concerned about time constraints, ask your CVO about this option. You should only do this if it is explicitly authorized by your CVO. Providing your biometric data is an essential step to be taken as soon as possible after submitting an application for a study permit. The operation consists of providing your fingerprints and having your picture taken at a visa application center. The data collected is valid for a period of 10 years. You will not have to do it again if you submit other Canadian immigration applications in the next few years, such as applications for an extension of stay. Biometrics performed as part of the Canadian immigration process should not be confused with biometrics associated with, for example, your passport. Even if you have a biometric passport, you will have to pay the biometric fee and go to a visa application center. If you skip this step, your application will not be processed. Depending on the countries you have stated in the past few months, you may be required to undergo a medical examination by an IRCC designated physician. This can be done before or after you submit your application for a study permit. If possible, have it done in advance and provide proof of it when you submit your application for a study permit. Your visa office may also require that you demonstrate that you are a bona fide student by submitting a plan that details your future studies in Canada. If you are from a country or territory that does not require the submission of a study plan, but is known to have a high refusal rate, we advise you to provide one anyway. On the Polytechnique International student website, in the section dedicated to the first steps of immigration, you will find instructions to help you write an effective study plan. Although you only have to demonstrate financial capacity for the first year of your studies, before issuing your study permit, the officer processing your application must be satisfied that financial resources will also exist for subsequent years. In this regard, providing evidence of recurring funds is particularly helpful, such as payslips and an employment contract from your guarantors. Since you can have more than one guarantor for the study permit, you simply need to provide a declaration of financial support from each person along with their financial proofs. If you are a student who is legally residing in a country other than your country of nationality, you should know that you can submit your application to the CVO in charge of applications in the territory where you are staying. If you are in this situation, be aware that processing times may be longer than the average for the CVO. In addition to providing the documents required by the CVO in question, we advise you to add those required by the CVO for nationals of your country of citizenship. If you are a student admitted to the preparatory year or bachelor's program, do not forget to apply for a co-op work permit at the same time as your study permit. This permit will require you to complete the internships planned in your program. If you fail to apply for one at this stage, you can always apply for one after your arrival in Canada. Unlike the application, the CAQ application, it is possible to attach documents to a current application using a web form on the IRCC website. Notwithstanding this possibility, try to submit a complete application at the outset so as not to delay the processing of your application. If your spouse and/or dependent children plan to come to Canada with you, you must ensure that you complete the appropriate applications for them. If they wish to come to Canada as visitors, accompanying spouses must apply for a temporary resident visa or an ETA, depending on their nationality. To be eligible to work while in Canada, they must apply for an open work permit instead. Minor children of the student who are of primary or secondary school age must come to Canada on a study permit. No letter of admission to an educational institution is required for them. For preschoolers, you must apply for a temporary resident visa or an ETA. The authorized length of stay in Canada for dependents is the same as that of the student. To conclude this presentation, here is a list of essential resources to help you with your applications. On the MIFI and IRCC websites, you will find the process for opening an online account and filing an application. Most of the instructions to guide you through the application process are there. Polytechnique Montreal's International Students website, more specifically its section on immigration procedures from outside Canada, gives you an overview of the steps to take and complements the information available on the MIFI and IRCC websites. We strongly recommend that you consult it. Do not hesitate to contact our international student advisors if you have any questions or if you are experiencing difficulties in your immigration process. To contact us, write to scp-international@polymtl.ca and provide us with your name and student ID number found on your offer of admission. For all other questions, please write to info@polymtl.ca. On that note, we wish you good luck in your efforts. We look forward to seeing you further in the Go Poly program. Thank you for watching.